Hey everyone, Matt Brunig here with a third video in the series of videos here. In this video, I want to explain how I make data about the Starbucks Union report and how I make all the graphs and collect all the information and stuff like that. But before I get into it, I want to highlight this comment from Taylor Borey. He says, if you are looking for production feedback, is there a way to turn off auto exposure? Especially when you gesture close to the camera, the exposure flickers rapidly, like at 12:01 in the prior video. And yes, I have. Thank you for the advice. See, ooh, no flickering. Again, I'm going to keep emphasizing these comments because I want people to give me advice on how to make this stuff look better. So I appreciate that. With that, let's hop on in to the show today. So for the last half year or so, I've been producing these pieces. Here's the latest one titled Starbucks Union is nearing 7,000 workers, which I published on November 8th. And it's just a data rundown of everything we know about the Starbucks Union Drive. If you're unfamiliar, for the last year or so, in fact, the 1-year anniversary is just coming up. That's why I'm making this video and why I'm doing another sort of data dump about it. For a year or so, SEIU, who is the sort of institutional sponsor, I guess, if you will, of the Starbucks Workers United Union, they've been organizing the Starbucks Union very rapidly, kind of shockingly, with shocking speed. And so I've been just kind of trying to keep track of the numbers for it, and I've been producing these graphs. So you see here cumulative unfair labor practice charges, cumulative election filings, union wins, number of workers in the Starbucks union, and on it goes. Here's a cool map I did. So part of what I'm interested in doing as I do these videos is this is kind of helping people understand how I do this stuff. I don't know if that's wise, seeing as I make money doing it, but it could be interesting. And hopefully you don't try to undercut me, or hopefully you do. I don't know. We need more people doing this stuff who share my politics. So what I do for this data in particular is I go to the NLRB website and I download two CSVs, which are comma separated value files. It's a spreadsheet. And this is the case CSV, which refers to unfair labor practice charges and election filings. So C cases and R cases. You see here we got the C case and we got the R case. And before I download the CSV, I actually do this search. Starbucks Corporation is what most of the C cases and R cases filed are titled. You see right here, actually, the boom, boom, boom. Starbucks Corporation, Starbucks Corporation, Starbucks Corporation. But they also have a subsidiary of Starbucks called Siren Retail, and they run those stores you may have seen called like the Starbucks Reserve stores. And I think they sell alcohol at those stores. It's kind of got a different vibe to it. I don't know. If you see them on the street, I think they're called Starbucks Reserves, but the actual company that they're organized under is called Siren Retail, but Siren Retail is owned by Starbucks. Anyways, you got to do both to get all the cases. So I put that search in, I hit download CSV, and out comes the file. I won't download it here because it actually takes an extremely long time for this website to compile that file and send it to you. And then for election filings, the same thing, just a different report that you have to download the CSV for. The election results don't let you make that kind of search up front where you can just narrow it to Starbucks and the Siren Retail Company. So you just have to download everything and then do the search on your end. Now I've noticed that if you just hit download CSV, sometimes they give you what you want. Sometimes you get random stuff. I don't know what's going on. The system is not working all that well. But I've noticed that if you put a date range, so here I'm doing December 1st of last year to December 8th of this year, which is today as I'm recording it. If you just put a date range in there, for some reason that gets you somewhat cleaner stuff. It gets you what you want. I don't know. It's hard for me to understand why that would be the case, but it does seem to be. So I download those two files, and then I get to work in the number crunching. Now, like I said, these two files are actually just spreadsheets, right? So you see them right here in my Starbucks directory, and you can open them up, in Excel, and you can see, look, they've got all this. I guess I should probably bump the text size here, right? You've got, all these fields: region, case number, case name, status, date file, date closed, reason closed, city, on and on and on, number of eligible voters, void ballots, the votes for the union, the votes against the union, total ballots filed, the union that's filing. Here's SEIU local 32VJ. They even give you the unit. There are some addresses in here sometimes. Some of this data is very hygienic in that the columns are really nice, some of it less so. But in any case, it's not going to do you very good for what I'm trying to do, to try to run through this like in Excel. So you want to use a programming language to get at it. And I personally use Python. But you could use other things. Obviously, R is probably the most common thing people use these days. And one of the reasons for it is just the number of entries in these files. These are relatively small files. I mean, I work with files sometimes that have millions of lines. This one has 6,794 lines. One of those is that top line. So there's 6,793 election results listed in that file. For cases, I think it's going to be a little bit better. No, it's worse. 9,258 cases listed in that file. And, that's a lot to go through if you're trying to do this manually. So I'd recommend that you don't do that. So instead, I wrote this Python script, which I call starbucks.py. And before I get into the script, I don't know, should I say script, program? I don't know. Before I get into it, let me just preface by saying this is a script that I run on my own computer like once a month or whatever. It actually runs reasonably quickly, but if you're just writing like stuff to crunch through a spreadsheet, which is pretty much all we're doing when we're doing statistical stuff, even when you're working with big data or whatever, like for the most part, it's just a big old spreadsheet that you're working through. Optimizing the code, it doesn't matter. No one else is going to see the code. You're going to run it once. If it takes 1 second to run or 5 seconds to run, it doesn't matter, right? So just make the code simple. And I even like to, instead of using like pandas, which is a Python library, or do they call them modules? I don't know. Instead of using pandas or R and kind of taking advantage of the tools that those provide you to do it with like less code, I like to just kind of walk through the code line by line, and because it allows me to do certain kind of things that I would prefer to do, whatever. And the other thing I like to do is, instead of writing code that gets me the exact number that I want all the time, a lot of what I'm trying to do is just write code that will dump out a new spreadsheet that'll be a lot easier to work with. In part because if you have the new spreadsheet, if you need to do different things that you didn't expect to do initially with the code, like new ideas occur to you, it's easier if you kind of have the data just dumped out into a really easy to use spreadsheet. But also because ultimately I graph all my stuff with Google Sheets. In the past, I've used HighCharts, which would have the same thing. So ultimately, I'm going to paste this data into a spreadsheet program in order to make my graphs. You can make the graphs with like ggplot and all that kind of stuff. I know how to do that. I have done it in the past. It's not worth the effort, and it's nice to have the spreadsheet for lots of reasons. So I'm just prefacing it with all that. There are other ways to do this, optimal, cleaner, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I just do this for myself. So I'm not going to explain this code exactly. I'll run through a little bits of it. I might do a piece showing you how to, trying to explain how some this works more in depth with other stuff. you know, like a simple thing where I'm just trying to produce one statistic instead of like 6 or 7. But for now, you know, I mean, what we do here is we open the file. This one opens the case file, and you use the CSV library to read it into some kind of object or whatever. This one opens the election file. And then, you know, I get the names at the top of the row. So remember, we've got, oh, I closed that. Anyways, at the top of the first row, you have the name of each column. I put those in a list, which then allows me later on to use the index of that list to get the value for each row. I don't know. I'm probably really boring you at this point. But yeah, I mean, so what I do is, for example, the first thing I want to do is I want to figure out how many C charges there are. A C charge is an unfair labor practice charge. Okay? How many C cases, I guess there are. So what I do is I just iterate through the lines in that file, which I think we saw already. No, we saw the election file, but it's the same kind of thing. So I just say for line in that file. I use the 1 dot here because we want to skip the first line, because the first line has the names of the variables. It does, so we don't want to include that. And then we just, for each line, assign the case type, assign the case number, the date filed, the status. I have participants on here, though I don't use that in here. I don't know. Probably should delete that, whatever. And then I just print the case number and the date filed, because that's ultimately all I really want. Is for each C case, which again are unfair labor practice charges, for each C case, I want the case number and I want the date filed, and I just print it with a comma in between them. And so that's the first thing I do, and then I move on to the next thing, and I basically do the exact same thing as I did here for C cases, but I do it for R cases, right? So if the case is an R case, we're going to print the case number, the date filed, and the city and the state. Again, I'm not sure if I actually use city and state anywhere. And this is a separator. So we want these values separated with a comma. If you don't put the separator in there, it separates it with a space, but I want it separated with a comma because I'm making a spreadsheet. We print that out and we fill up these variables. Now we go to the election outcomes. In this one, we open up the election file, right? Election rows. Remember up here, we're doing case rows. We open up the election files. We fill out all these variables. I don't even think I use all these variables either. At some point when I was writing the script, I probably was using them. And the first thing we have to do with this one, unlike the other one, is remember, we didn't get to filter this data up front to make sure it only had the Starbucks stuff. We didn't get to do that like we did with the C and R cases. So for the election results, we have to do that here. And so what I do is I basically say, look, if the name of the case, and then I apply this case fold thing, which I think has some, like, it helps you with variable capitalization and stuff. I don't remember exactly. I knew when I put it in there. If the case name is not in Starbucks names, which is this list here of all the names of the Starbucks that show up in the data that I've seen so far. So if the case name is not in that list, then we continue to the next line. We skip that election. So that way you only get Starbucks elections. We want to ignore duplicates. I've found that sometimes you get duplicates on here. This is just a little bit of code to make sure we don't count the same election twice. Here's some data hygiene. So if there's 0 votes for or 0 votes against the union on a given row, in the file that the NLRB sends you, that cell is just empty. It doesn't contain a 0. It's just empty. It's got nothing. So what we do is we say if the length of that cell is 0, meaning it's empty, it's the number of characters is 0, right? If the length of that cell is 0, then we just set it to 0. We put the integer 0 for there because that's what we need in the file I'm trying to create. Do that for votes against as well. And then here we go. We just print the case number, the city, the state, the date that it was tallied, the number of eligible voters, the void ballot. We print all this with a comma separator. And then this, I'm not going to explain this. This is me. I had to kind of put this in at the end. This is me trying to count up the number of cities and states that have election victories and to count the number of election victories they have. I kind of fill up these dictionaries for use later. It's that one's not worth talking about. And then at the end, I have two more little things I want to do. One, I want to see how many open election cases are there where there's no outcome that's been reported. So I just walk through all of the open R cases, which remember I populated up here, right here, the open R cases. I populated that list up here. I walk through the open R cases and I say if they're not in the election cases, remember, which I populate here. So any open R case that's not in an election case, in the election case list, we print that. That'll give us the number of elections that haven't been run, basically, later on. And then I print this cities with victories. And this was all this stuff here is really populated right here. But, you know, this was added on like later and it was easier to do it this way. So if we run this script with the files we have, right? So I just, Python 3.7, and these are the two files that we downloaded from the NLRB. I need to write the name of the script here, starbucks.py. If we run those, you'll get your result here. And you see these are all the cities with election wins, and they have the number of election wins here. So you have the city, the state, and then you have the number of election wins. See, and we've got a little title here, cities with victories. And this is the open R cases with no elections. Here we just have the number of the case number. These are the election results, right? Case number, cities, state, votes for, votes against, blah, 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 blah. And on it goes. These are the election filings. You see, so it just prints all that out like that. Now, of course, that's not really very usable right there. So what I'll do is I'll redirect it to a new file that I'll call output.csv. And then there's the file, output.csv. We can just open that in Excel. And there it is. And this has all the kind of like information that I'm looking for. So what I do from this point is I just dump this into this Google Sheet. I've used this before, so I won't have to do, I'm not going to show you how I like populate, but you know, you dump it in here and you use this button right here. You see this? You use this to make graphs, and maybe that's pretty easy, I think. But that's what I do. So these are the C cases. These are the unfair labor practice charges. And what I'm trying to do here is just get a number. I just want to know how many C cases have there been. And I want the C cases that were filed in this spate of organizing, which I believe begins here, right? Because all this stuff happened way earlier, right? You see the dates here. If we go down and down, I guess I should increase the size, right? If we go down, we see the dates here, right? The first one looks like November 4th. But I think in my file, I specifically, because see, since January. So I only want to start with the January one. Okay. So then I just paste all that in. Struggling a little bit. There we go. And as you can see at the bottom of the file, since we've added more since last time, these are all not don't have the date style that I like. So I need to for the purposes of making my graph work the way I want, I have to change it to just a date here. No, we want month. Yeah, we want that, right? Boom. All right. And then at the beginning of it, I also need to put, this is just to make the graph work. We want to start it at January 1st, 2022. Okay. And then we're going to bring this stuff down. Because all I do is I just kind of count. I start, like it starts at 0, right? And then the first one we just take the last cell right here and add 1 to it, right? And we just do that all the way up. There you go. Boom. And then we are going to adjust this so that it's at the current date. And there you have it. Am I cutting it off? No, I'm not cutting it off. It goes up to 548, 550. Perfect. All right. So now we have that graph, right? And we can go on and do the same thing for election filings. It's the exact same process. So I'm not going to run you through that. And then we can do election outcomes. And this is all in the one spreadsheet. So there we go. Okay, so election outcomes, see right there. And I just copy all this. Whoops, too far. Oh boy. Okay. So these are the outcomes of all the elections that they've run so far. It's a little clumsy. Do not go too far. Okay, there we go. Okay, Control C. And I'll just dump them in here. All right. And on the right here, this is all like formulas that I've written. So percent support obviously is votes for divided by votes for plus votes against. Win, yes or no. If they're more votes for than against, then put a 1. If if that's not true, then put a 0, which we count as a loss. And then cumulative elections, we just add all the elections. Cumulative wins, we just add up all the win yes or no's. And cumulative votes for, it's the same kind of thing, right? You just add up all the votes, and off we go. Now, every time you paste this stuff in here, you got to go back down to the bottom and make sure, everything's starting where you want it to start. So, like I said, it's not like the most beautiful process in the world. But I've found over time, especially since you like to, some things you want to change up and all this kind of stuff, it's a good process for allowing you like maximum flexibility. And I'll actually give you an example of why that's the case in a second. I think I can just nope. Okay. The main reason that's the case, here we go. Okay, I think that's work. Oh no, that's not going the way I want it to go. Here we go. Is that right? Yes, okay. Right. So the first election they actually lost. Well, in my data set, these elections were held on the same day, as you see. So, but that's the first one the NLRB has in its record, and they actually lost that. They only got 40% of the vote, and then they went on a fucking winning tear. Well, that's why we can't do win rate of the last 20 elections. We need to count them, don't we? How many elections do we have? Okay, so it starts at 333. So to get the last 22, we need to start at 311, right? So 11. I got pretty close. Okay. All right. And once you just kind of clean that all up and get everything new in there, remember I need to start this date again, bring it up to the 8th, which is today. Do I need to fix? Yeah, I need to fix these dates. Like I said, I do this once a month at most, so if it takes me a second or two, I'm okay with that. So for this one, I like to do month and year, right? There we go. And we want to start this at December 1st. And then there we go. We got all the numbers in, and then look, the graphs update. Cumulative win at Starbucks. since December 2021. I probably could change the axis here. I'll do that later. All right, all these graphs just update. And then all I got to do is, download them, which I can do here. I usually download them as SVGs and then dump that into a piece on the website. Do the same thing for R cases. For the map one is a little creative, I think. So I take all of the, here's the cities and states where there are election victories, right? And I just dump that in there. And there we go. Now this is set up to, as a formula to bring the city and state together in this like comma way. And then this is also a formula, and it just creates the HTML for the table that I eventually pop into my website. So like you see the table at the bottom here. I just copy and paste this HTML into like a little HTML box that you can use in the WordPress thing, like to embed HTML, and it creates that when I do that. Now, the way I like to organize this is by I want to sort it by the cities that have the most unionized stores. So we're going to go Z to A. There we go. But then once we get to one store, right, once we get to one store, I want to sort by the state's name so that all the cities in the same state are next to each other. So I sort by, no, we don't have a header road. I sort by column B, which is the name of the state, and I go A to Z on that. And there you go. I need to bring these down because we got a few additions. You do that, and that is not fully populated, but there's your graph. It might take a second for everything to get like back on there. Yeah, eventually all the little dots and shit show up on there. And what I do with this one is I screenshot it and then I drop it into an image editor and I put the title on it. But yeah, I mean, that's it. I don't know if that's it. I don't know if that's it in the sense that that's easy to do or not. Normally I don't have the text this big, but for you guys. That's how it's done. So, good luck trying to copy it. Or I hope you can figure out other ways to do it. Let's actually get some info on this, because this is the first time I've done this for this one, and I'm doing it for the 1 year anniversary, because the first election they won, as we see down here, the first election they ever won was on December 9th. It's today, December 8th. So tomorrow will be the 1 year anniversary of that. I have some aggregate stats here. This is the number of states with a union. And here's total union wins. It's at 267 for a total membership of 6,934. So they won 267 elections in 365 days. No, that's 0.73 elections per day, or maybe a better way to put it is like you just do it the other way, right? 365, and then you go. They won an election every 1.3 days. Every 1.3 days they won an election, and they won 81% of them. Average unit size 26 people. And then for this one, actually, I take the number of cases that haven't been. This is not right yet because I haven't put those numbers in there. But I take the number of open election cases that haven't been decided yet, and I just multiply it by the average unit size, and then I'm able to say that's. Oh, I multiply it by the win rate and then the unit size, and then that gets you how many union members that are probably in the pipeline, but that they just haven't run the election yet, and then you can get the total membership. Like I said, these numbers are not correct right now because I didn't put the open R cases with no election, though I could do that right now, actually, because that's an interesting figure you might want to know. For a while, there were a lot of open R cases without elections because they just filed so many so quickly. The NLRB just didn't know what to do with it. It just was taking them a long time. But now the NLRB has kind of processed that backlog. So yeah, so the total number of elections that are outstanding, I just that's how many wins they should win if they win 81% of these elections. If they win 81% of them, which is their typical win rate, then they'll win another 14 elections, and that'll be another 356 members. That brings us to 281 total elections, which is the 267 plus the 14. And it brings us to a total membership of 7,290. So, yep, that's what I'm going to put on the piece. Hope that was interesting to you. Let's see if I can get the audio and video and everything set up. Let me know what you think. I love the comments, so keep them coming. Bye-bye.